At my birthday party, I had planned to announce my pregnancy. Instead, my boyfriend handed me a small gift box. Inside was a folded note that said, "I'm leaving you. You're useless, and I deserve better." Everyone laughed as he walked out. Our friends stared at me, waiting for a reaction. I just smiled, because he had no idea what I was capable of. 2 months later, that same man was drunk outside my house, shouting my name. I'd been with Justin for just over 3 years. He was charming, attentive, and actually paid attention when I spoke, a rare quality. Things moved fast between us, and by our 1-year anniversary, we were living together in a small apartment we could barely afford. It wasn't perfect timing financially, but rent in this city never really is. Our relationship wasn't flawless, but it felt stable. We shared similar dreams: buy a home, travel a bit, maybe start a family someday. Justin, however, cared a lot about appearances: what car we drove, which restaurants we went to, and posting perfect photos online. I should have seen that as a warning sign, but hindsight is always clearer. About 4 months ago, I started feeling off, nauseous in the mornings, exhausted all the time. I took a pregnancy test just to rule it out. We'd been careful, but not perfectly so. 2 pink lines appeared. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor, staring at that little stick as if it were written in code. It took me a week to process it before I told anyone. My best friend, Barbara, was the first. She came over for our regular girls' night, brought wine, and immediately figured it out when I stuck to water. She asked all the right questions: what I wanted, how Justin might react, practical things like insurance and maternity leave. Talking to her helped me organize my thoughts. As for Justin, I decided to wait. My birthday was in 3 weeks, and it felt like the perfect moment to share the news with him and our close friends. We'd already planned a small get-together at our apartment, and I imagined announcing it surrounded by people I loved. Again, hindsight. The weeks before my birthday were strange. I was dealing with morning sickness, which really lasted all day, and trying to hide it from Justin. He didn't seem to notice, which I blamed on him being busy. He was coming home later, spending more time on his phone, and acting distant. I thought maybe he was stressed about work. My birthday landed on a Saturday. I spent the morning setting up while Justin went to pick up the cake, which took him nearly 3 hours. Our friends started arriving around 6. Barbara and her husband, our friends Aaron and Sergio, my cousin Lana, and a few others, including Maria, a college friend. The party was going smoothly. Good food, drinks, music, laughter. I planned to make my announcement after the cake, and Barbara kept giving me encouraging looks across the room. Around 9 p.m., Justin clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. My heart stopped. I wondered if he had somehow discovered the pregnancy and was going to make his own announcement. He began a speech about how special I was and how lucky he felt to have me. Everyone smiled as he looked straight into my eyes. Then he handed me a small, beautifully wrapped box with a silk ribbon. The room went quiet. Some guests even pulled out their phones, ready to record the moment. I thought it might be an engagement ring. For a second, I panicked. Should I still announce the pregnancy if he proposed? I opened the box. Inside wasn't a ring, but a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it and read, "I'm leaving you. You're useless, and I deserve better. Your things will be packed by Monday." I stared at him, sure it was a joke, but his expression had turned cold and distant, almost amused. Then, Loud enough for everyone to hear, he said we were done, that it had been fun, but he'd outgrown me. Then he laughed. A few guests chuckled too, thinking it was some sort of prank. But Justin just walked out the door without another word. The silence that followed was unbearable. I stood there, holding that note, my pregnancy announcement dying in my throat. Barbara crossed the room first, took the note from my hand, read it, and muttered that he was a complete bastard. Then everyone started talking at once. Concern, outrage, confusion. And me? I just smiled. Not because I wasn't shattered. I was. Not because I wasn't humiliated. I absolutely was. I smiled because in that moment, I realized Justin had no idea what was coming. He thought he was in control, that this public breakup was his perfect exit, his moment of power. But he didn't know I was pregnant with his child. He didn't know I had found his secret credit card statements 2 weeks earlier while looking for a stamp in his desk. He didn't know I had already seen the texts on his Apple Watch when he was in the shower. He really should have set up two-factor authentication. Most importantly, he didn't know that I don't fall apart when pushed. I plan. I get strategic. So I smiled, thanked everyone for coming, and told them I was fine. I wasn't. And that they didn't need to worry. They did anyway. I even cut the birthday cake Barbara brought and handed out slices as if celebrating an ending rather than a disaster. Maria left early, saying she felt sick. Interesting timing, right? Don't worry, we'll get to her. The rest stayed behind, helping me clean up, offering me places to stay, shoulders to cry on, and even joking about alibis for murder. Mostly joking. By midnight, everyone was gone, except Barbara, who insisted on sleeping on my couch. Once we were alone, I finally broke down. The pregnancy, the betrayal, the humiliation. It all hit me at once. Barbara just held me while I sobbed. She didn't try to fix it or say things like, "Everything happens for a reason." She just stayed quiet, present. Around 2 a.m., I told her about the pregnancy. She wasn't even surprised. She'd suspected it for weeks. Then I showed her the credit card statements. Hotel stays, expensive dinners, and jewelry that never reached me. I scrolled through screenshots of messages to M, heart emojis, secret plans to Neat when I was working late. We both knew who M was, especially after Maria's quick exit that night. We stayed up talking until dawn, weighing options and making plans. Barbara asked if I'd tell Justin about the baby. I said I would, but only on my terms, when I was ready, not before. As for his affair and his lies, I wasn't going to stoop to petty revenge. But I would make sure the truth came out, all of it. Barbara looked at me with concern, but also something else. Respect. She said I could be scary when I got that determined look. I laughed, for the first time since opening that box. That night, lying alone for the first time in years, one hand on my still flat stomach, I made 2 promises. One, to my unborn child, that I'd give them a safe, loving home no matter what. And 2, to myself, that I'd come out of this stronger than ever. Justin thought that cruel note was the end of our story. But if there's one thing I've learned from all those true crime podcasts I listen to while folding laundry, it's that the best revenge takes patience, planning, and a clear head. And I had plenty of all 3. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and pancakes. Barbara was still there, acting casual, but clearly watching over me. She kept urging me to eat, worried about the baby. I managed a few bites before the nausea hit again. Morning sickness really is the most misleading term. Justin didn't come back that Sunday. It was both a relief and torture. I spent most of the day shifting between numbness, anger, and this strange sense of detachment. My brain went into survival mode. I made lists, financial tasks, doctor appointments, people to notify, anything to keep busy and avoid feeling. Barbara helped me pack up some of Justin's belongings, not all of them, just enough to make it clear that I wasn't waiting for him to return. My phone buzzed non-stop with messages from friends. Most were kind and concerned, a few nosy and fishing for gossip. One name, however, was notably missing: Maria. Monday morning brought reality. I called in sick to work, something I almost never do, and scheduled a doctor's appointment to confirm the pregnancy. Around noon, while researching tenant laws, since both our names were on the lease, I got a text from Justin. "I'll be by at 7 to get my things. Make sure you're not there." The audacity stunned me. I stared at the message for 5 solid minutes before replying with a simple no. No explanation, no compromise, just a firm boundary. He called immediately, and I declined. Then I called Barbara. Within hours, she had gathered our friends, Aaron, Sergio, my cousin Lana, and a couple of others. A quiet show of solidarity. By 6:30 p.m., my apartment was full of people who loved me. When Justin arrived at 7 sharp, his expression was priceless. He tried to act confident, demanding to know what was going on. But Aaron, 6'4" and built like a tank, handed him one suitcase. Aaron told him calmly that the rest of his belongings would be available once Justin arranged a proper pickup time and showed a little decency. Justin tried to look at me, maybe to gauge my reaction, but I stayed seated on the couch, deliberately calm. When he started arguing, I finally spoke. I told him he was lucky I hadn't changed the locks yet, and that we could talk about the rest of his stuff once I'd had time to process his birthday gift. Something in my voice must have stopped him from pushing further. He muttered something about me always needing an audience. Rich, coming from a man who publicly dumped me, and left with the suitcase. After the door closed, I cried again, not for him, but for the future I thought I'd have, for the family I'd imagined, and for the child who deserved better than a father capable of such cruelty. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had the locks changed. Now, about Maria. I'd suspected her from the moment she left the party feeling sick, but I needed proof. It came sooner than I expected. Sergio texted me a few days later, saying he and Aaron had seen Justin and Maria together months ago, but hadn't been sure what to make of it. He apologized for not telling me sooner. It felt like getting punched in the stomach, painful, but confirming what I already knew. Justin had been cheating, and with Maria, of all people, someone I'd welcomed into my home, trusted, and considered a friend. Instead of confronting them, I decided to wait, watch, gather information. Maybe I'd listened to too many true crime podcasts, but patience really is a useful skill. Over the next week, I focused on practical things, confirming the pregnancy, 10 weeks along, meeting with a lawyer about the lease and finances, freezing our joint credit card, and opening a new account in my own name. I told no one but Barbara about the pregnancy, not out of denial, but strategy. I needed time to get everything in order. 2 weeks after the disastrous birthday, Justin texted again. "We should talk. I need to pick up the rest of my stuff." I agreed to meet him, but only on my terms, at a cafe in public, during the day. When he arrived, I barely recognized him. He looked exhausted, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing a wrinkled shirt. A small, shameful part of me felt satisfaction. He started rambling immediately, saying he'd been unhappy, felt trapped, thought a clean break would be best. I let him talk until he ran out of excuses. Then I asked quietly, "Is Maria making you happy?" His reaction was almost comical, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, completely caught off guard. He stammered denials that were so transparent I almost laughed. I cut him off and told him I knew everything. The hotel bills, the jewelry, the credit card, the texts. I asked him to just be honest for once. He deflated instantly, trying the old "it's not what you think" line. I told him it didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was that he could collect his things that Saturday at 2 p.m. Aaron would be there to supervise, and after that, any communication would go through my lawyer. When he heard the word lawyer, his face changed. He insisted we didn't need one, that we could work things out. I stayed calm, heart pounding but voice steady, and told him that ship had sailed the night he humiliated me in front of everyone. As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist, not roughly, just desperate. He asked how I'd afford the apartment alone, reminding me my job barely covered half the rent. And that's when it all clicked. This wasn't about closure or regret. He was worried about money. The truth was, I'd been paying more than half the rent for a year. I smiled and told him I'd be fine. Unlike some people, I actually saved money instead of spending it on hotels and jewelry. His face drained of color. He knew I had all the evidence. I walked out of that cafe feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Not because I'd won, but because I finally saw him clearly. Justin wasn't some mysterious, complicated man. He was shallow, performative, and weak. Saturday came, and Aaron supervised while Justin collected the rest of his things. I spent the day at a prenatal yoga class. Highly recommended, by the way, for stress relief. When I came home, the apartment felt emptier, but in a good way. More mine. I spent that evening. As for Justin and Maria, word spread quickly. Through Sergio, I heard they were fighting often. Maria had realized he wasn't nearly as successful as he claimed. Apparently, Justin had promised her a lifestyle he couldn't sustain. A month after our cafe meeting, I ran into Maria at the grocery store. Literally, our carts bumped. She looked startled, then guilty, then defensive. She greeted me awkwardly, saying I looked good. I told her she looked tired, which she did. She had that same hollow look Justin had worn during our last conversation. After a long, tense silence, she blurted out that Justin told her we were basically over when they started seeing each other, just living together until the lease ended. I raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She stumbled through what sounded like a weak apology, saying she wouldn't have gotten involved if she'd known we were still together. I finally said, "It doesn't matter now. You have him. Enjoy it." As I turned to leave, she called after me, saying he wasn't what she thought, that he'd promised things he couldn't deliver. I looked back at her, once a friend, now just another consequence of his lies, and said calmly, "That sounds like a personal problem." It's been 6 months since that night, the night everything fell apart, and weirdly began again. I moved out of that apartment 2 months ago. The lease was finally up, and I found a smaller place across town. It's quiet, filled with sunlight, and doesn't carry the echoes of someone else's betrayal. There's a tiny balcony where I keep potted basil and mint, and every morning I sit there with a cup of tea, feeling the baby kick. Yes, I decided to keep the baby. That wasn't an easy choice. I spent weeks agonizing over it, terrified of being a single mom, of doing it wrong, of turning into someone bitter. But then one night, I felt this soft flutter inside me. It was the first undeniable proof that there was life growing there. My life, my child. And I knew, whatever came next, I could handle it. Babra's been a constant. She comes by almost every evening, bringing food or folding baby clothes, always acting like she's not checking on me, though she absolutely is. Sergio and Lana painted the nursery one weekend, laughing and blasting old music like nothing bad had ever happened. For the first time in months, I felt surrounded by love again, the real kind, not the performative kind Justin used to flaunt. As for him, he tried reaching out again round month 4. First, a text saying, "Hope you're okay." I ignored it. Then another one, 2 weeks later, "I heard you're pregnant. Is it mine?" I didn't even dignify that with a reply. Barbara wanted me to send him a photo of the positive test labeled Exhibit A, but I told her I wasn't giving him the satisfaction. A few days later, he actually showed up at my new place. I hadn't told him my address, but apparently he found it through an old friend of ours. He knocked for nearly 5 minutes before I opened the door. Calm, collected, and ready. He looked worse than before, thinner, maybe drinking again. He said he just wanted to talk, that he'd made mistakes, that Maria wasn't who he thought she was. Apparently, she'd left him when his finances started falling apart. He tried apologizing, the kind of half apology where every other sentence starts with "but." He said he was scared, confused, thought I deserved better than him. Then he asked if there was any chance we could start over, for the baby's sake. I told him no. Not angrily, not dramatically, just a clear, final no. I explained that I'd forgiven him for my own peace, but forgiveness isn't the same as trust, and it doesn't mean reconciliation. I told him the baby deserved stability, not chaos. That if he wanted to be involved, he'd have to go through a lawyer and prove he could handle basic responsibility first. He looked like he wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to say. He left quietly. I haven't seen him since. Some nights, I still think about that party, the music, the lights, the moment everything shattered. It used to make me angry, but now it just feels distant, like a story that happened to someone else. I've learned that healing isn't some dramatic turning point. It's a series of small, quiet decisions. Choosing not to text back. Choosing to wake up early and make breakfast. Choosing to find joy in small things, even when your world's been turned upside down. Last week, I went for my final ultrasound. The doctor smiled and said the baby's healthy. Strong heartbeat, steady growth. I cried right there in the room. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in a long while, I wasn't scared anymore. I know the road ahead won't be easy. There'll be sleepless nights and hard days, but there will also be laughter, tiny hands, and second chances. And sometimes, when I sit on that balcony and the wind moves through the leaves, I realize something. I didn't lose everything that night. I just lost the illusion. What I gained, self-respect, freedom, and a future that's mine, was worth far more. So yeah, that's the update. I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. And if you're listening to this and you're in that place, the one where everything feels like it's falling apart, I want you to know something. It's not the end. Sometimes it's just the part where you finally start telling the truth to yourself.